I'm really glad you could get together. I've been wanting to do this for the longest time. Because the last few times I talked with you, which were a couple times at the depot, I was just so fascinated with some of the stories you were telling me. You know, one in particular, which is always my favorite, was them tearing down, how they tore down the water tower, the Milwaukee Road water tower south of the depot there, a couple blocks. Now, what was the details about that? You were saying...
Well, when it was changing the diesel, they didn't need it anymore, and they put it up for sale. So I bought it.
You bought it?
I bought it, yeah.
How much did you buy it for?
What was it? $10, $12.
$10, $12 for that big water tower.
I paid for it.
Wow.
Water tank. And then my dad was a foreman on the section there. So we come in one day with the train, and before we left, I took the engine down there and we hooked on the chain onto the post, and we pulled the post off from underneath her, and she laid over.
Down, really? Now, what year would that have been? Probably.
Was we married?
Oh yeah. I don't know if you was before service or after.
Yeah, I think it was before.
Well, you went in service in 44.
Anyway,
we were married in 41, so it had to be.
Yeah. And anyhow, never touched it. A guy wanted to buy the lumber because it was redwood, you know.
Okay.
So he offered me so much for the lumber, so I made arrangements with him that he haul his own lumber, and all the metal he put on a pile, because there was rods around it and braces and so on. And then I had Cyril Cooperschmidt. He went down with his truck and picked up the scrap metal and weighed it, and then, so he paid me for that, so I didn't have to do anything but pull it down.
And what kind of engine was it that you...
We still had a steam engine.
Steam engines?
Yeah.
Now, what kind of steam engines were they using?
L2.
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 Let me see. I think I've got a picture. Was it similar to something like this? This was taken in Mendota by a guy.
Yeah, that looked like it. Yeah. Yeah, 404. Yeah, that's an L2.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, this picture a friend of mine gave me, and I thought, now that's the first colored picture that I've seen of a Milwaukee engine in Mendota.
Years ago, they had smaller engines there. I gave them a picture of a steam engine. It was down on the house track there where they used to...
okay, I think I remember seeing that one.
Yeah, where they used to...
Was it in the
clean
winter
them,
time?
and they had a tender there to keep the fire going and everything.
Now, where was the house track there? Was that right behind the depot?
Behind the depot.
Okay, all right.
That's where the Q interchanged.
Okay, because was there a grain elevator there somewhere along that lines? In the early
was years before my time. I can't remember it.
Okay.
The first I seen it was you had it up there.
Right, okay, because I had seen a picture, a very old picture of it in the distance. I said, that's on that track. Mm-hmm. And I had never heard about it.
See, Main Street should go down through there.
Oh, okay, yeah.
See, years ago,
connecting with 2nd Street or something like that, you know, or the road in front of the depot.
Connected down with your street.
Okay.
Went across the track.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
It'd go right down behind the depot.
Okay.
Down there. And there was a sidewalk then in front of the depot all the way down to your corner.
Right.
And a couple lights. And when I first started on the section, on Saturdays, that was my job to cut all that grass between the tracks and that there. That was kept there, and there was 3 or 4 flower beds through there.
Really?
And you see that sidewalk was put down there for the people that was going to take the passenger train out of there and go and come. They'd walk to town then, see.
Oh, okay.
That's
So
the reason that sidewalk is through there.
now, did they get off at the big depot here and interchange?
Oh, no,
or-
they interchanged at the Milwaukee Depot.
Okay.
Yeah, they had that was a big station compared to what it is now.
Yeah, yeah. Because you told me that there was a freight end on it, a freight section
Oh yeah,
depot on the end of that.
Yeah. You probably remember where the motor cars went in.
Yes, I do.
That was the waiting room.
Okay, gotcha.
And there was a window from that room into the main room there. And see, at one time, the dispatchers and everything was at Mendota, and the train master and all that was the headquarters. So that was a pretty good sized depot.
Oh, okay.
in there.
So it was occupied 24 hours a day.
Oh sure, yeah.
Wow.
See, they said they used to have a train out there every half hour.
Really?
Yeah, of coal.
Oh, cool. Okay.
See, we had Cherry Mine
Yeah.
and Granville, Cedar Point, Stannard, Oglesby.
Interesting.
That was all coal.
I had
mines
never
on there.
imagined that there would be that many trains, but I
Oh, yeah.
remember that they started the line because of coal. They wanted to tap into the coal mines.
Well, see, this line was supposed to go way south.
Was it?
Yeah, and then they quit. They didn't continue on. The NYC went down on that,
Oh, okay.
over that line, see.
Okay, I see.
See, when we'd leave Ladd, we would go down to what they call Howe,
Okay.
and then we'd have to work with the NYC dispatcher to get out, and then we'd go from there to Granville on the NYC.
Okay.
And we used to go into Depew and interchange with Rock Island.
Okay. Into Depew. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Now, the line ended in Oglesby, was it? Your
Oglesby.
branch? Okay.
Mhm.
Now, when you worked on the railroad, did you have to go all the way to Oglesby and do switching or what have you, and
Oh,
then
yeah.
come back?
Yeah.
And it was cement in Oglesby mainly?
Yeah, and
Or-
then, yeah.
Okay.
And we had one train that did nothing every day, go to Oglesby and work at the cement mills.
Oh, really?
And then they'd come back. Of course, on the way back, they would have grain and lumber and so on at Cedar Point. And
Okay, on the way back, and
either way,
Either way,
we picked
okay.
up the loads coming back, and we
okay.
put out the loads
Oh,
going over for them.
I see.
See, there used to be lumber yards, and in that time they had coal, and then they all had elevators. They picked up. See, the grain didn't go to the river at that time. It all went on the railroad,
Okay.
even down in there, because you didn't have the trucks
Yeah.
and stuff. Of course, now the cement mostly goes on the trucks now.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's on New Year's, you'll hear on the radio at midnight, or they used to every time they had a train on Oglesby, the steam engine working and whistling. That was us coming up that hill from the Marquette.
Really?
Yeah, that
I
was in
didn't-
Milwaukee.
Really? A
Yeah.
recording, huh?
Yeah,
I did.
somebody made it there in Oglesby, and they
Is that right?
give it to the station, and you had been, I don't know, the last 2 years whether they did or not.
And they do it at New Year's Eve?
Yeah, New Year's and
What channel or what
Below that.
station was that?
WLPO.
LPO?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll have to listen for that. That's
Yeah, so-
interesting.
I'd like to get that. And then John Trout, who was the section foreman here when it quit over there, has got some pictures of the last Milwaukee train to leave Mendota.
Is he still living?
Is that right?
No, he's dead.
That's what I
Yeah.
thought.
It'd be
Was now that
something
was
to get.
what year was that? And 1980?
I was gone when that went. I was in Florida when they went. But there was, the people was on that train worked for me when I was on the railroad.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Now, what year did you retire from the railroad?
65.
65.
65, okay, all right. I had moved to Mendota in 72, so I didn't see you working or anything.
Yeah, there was a young fella that moved into that house that used to work at the gas station right at the corner of where 51 goes across to Q there.
Okay, right,
At
okay.
Muzzy's or
Muzzy's gas station.
Okay, uh-huh.
Do you remember Muzzy's?
Yes, I do. When I first moved to
Yeah.
Mendota in 72, those 3 gas stations were still there on the
Yeah,
corners.
there was a Standard, Muzzy's,
And then the Star or
and
something.
then there was another one on the other corner there.
Yeah, Phillips 66 or something like that.
Yeah, and
Sure has changed.
yeah.
Sure has
Then of
changed.
course we used to have to go to Cherry because that mine belonged to the Milwaukee Railroad. And the Milwaukee Railroad for all around down there got their company coal out of that mine there, see.
Okay, now, what years did you work for the railroad? Starting when?
I started for the railroad back in 34.
34. Okay, so were they still pulling coal out of the mine in Cherry at that
No,
time?
the mine disaster was before that.
Right.
And
Okay.
they closed that, sealed that mine, see.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, then, yeah.
Now,
We used to have to go over there for grain.
okay, at the grain elevator.
Yeah.
Okay, and how often was that?
Whenever they
Yeah, okay.
had grain, we just went down and got it, see.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. We went over
Yeah.
and got the grain, brought it back, and
Yeah.
then the night train took it out. But see, we had depots at Mendota, Welland, Scarborough, Roxbury, Stewart Junction, all had depots.
Okay.
And where the passengers used to pick up passengers.
And how many passenger trains were there in a day?
That I don't remember.
Okay, because I think they
That's been
stopped
quite-
running in 28 or
quite a
something,
while
was it?
ago. Yeah, see,
Yeah.
it was small then.
Yeah.
And
But a lot of people don't know that Milwaukee actually had passenger trains running through here at one time.
oh no, see, that was, we had in that station, you had the waiting room, and then you had the room where the dispatchers dispatched trains. And then out in the next room, you had where they had the storage room in the where they put their papers and stuff to keep,
Okay.
and they changed their clothes in there. And then on the east side of that, they had a room that was fenced off for flour that used to
Okay.
come in. See, they used to, and then they had a room that they unloaded coal off the house track into because they had pot-bellied stoves some days.
Okay.
And then in the back, then was the freight.
Okay.
Where they
On the
unloaded
south
freight.
end.
Oh yeah, and it was a lot bigger. They cut it down. They cut it way
Yeah.
off.
See, I didn't know that when I first moved here. I remember meeting you for the first time
Mm.
when the depot opened, the museum, and you had brought that to my attention. I says, I don't know anything about no freight, and then a picture came through. Somebody had brought in a picture, and there it was, and
Yeah, we
it
had
was there.
we had way freight. We used to have to unload, and then there was a dray man that used to pick up there in the IC and deliver the town
Okay.
what we'd unload in there.
With the horses.
And even with the truck,
Uh-huh.
Bill Haggie's dad, a man named Haggie, his son used to run the gamble store in Mendota. But he used to come down and with his truck and
Okay.
later before it quit.
I see.
In there.
Yeah.
And then that platform was big enough. We used to have automobile cars. We used to bring cars used to come in there and they'd unload them.
Brand new cars. Huh?
Oh, yeah, that's the only way they could get them would be by rail.
And were they put? What kind of cars were they put on?
They were
Just
like a
flat
box
car?
car, only they were bigger. They called them
okay.
an auto car,
Oh, okay.
and they put them in that. See,
Okay.
they didn't have these racks that they have nowadays.
Okay.
They come in there and they'd have to unload them on that platform.
And maybe a lot of farm machinery too. Did
And
you
the
get a
whole
lot?
boat, well, they didn't have a lot
Yeah.
those days.
Okay.
They had these little tractors. Towers made the first plow, you know,
Yeah.
over there. Quentin Tower, I went to school with him and Keith.
Oh yeah.
That was their
Here in
father.
Mendota.
And their father
Yeah.
and their uncle run it, yeah,
Wow.
in there. So the city's changed quite a bit.
Yeah. Sure has.
Now they're talking about this lake at Mendota, CB&Q Lake. It wasn't the CB&Q Lake.
Really?
It was IC.
Ah. Well, thank you very much for. I feel better now because I thought that it would have been the IC.
It's the IC. The IC owned all that property. They was the first train through. I mean, that owned it.
Yeah.
That tower there was IC tower that
Yeah.
the Q worked in.
And the big depot was the IC depot.
And see, the IC was the owned all that land, and they owned it all out in there where the wheel factory and stuff is. That was Illinois Central property back in there. They even one of them houses there. Years ago, they used to have houses for the foreman, and that one of them houses belonged to the Illinois Central Railroad, where their foreman used to live.
Oh.
Right in there by just up from the wheel factory in there.
Okay.
So that's the reason why the Q had to make arrangements with the Illinois Central to come across there, because that was all Illinois Central, and they made arrangements for their men to work in the tower because they run so many more trains after later on. See,
Okay.
that's how it comes, because that not the Q, CB&Q.
See, that's something I learned
See,
today.
Fred
A
Wagner's
lot every time I talk to Clarence.
Fred Wagner's father worked up in that tower before him, and Regal was another one, and what was that guy that lived across from us, had boys on 6th Street?
Never remember his name.
You know, and there was another one I can't think. But anyway, this when I started on the railroad, I was still going to school. I was a yard clerk. They
You're
give
still
me-
going to college or
No,
high school?
School. Yeah,
Oh,
I was.
So you must have been 17, 16?
Oh no, I was about 14.
14.
Yeah,
And you were a yard clerk.
yeah. I used to have to check the yards and the cars, make a list of them because for the train at night, and then we manifested them and everything. Made a list, did all that stuff before the train would come in there, and that was my job. I worked there for a guy by the name of Nielsen, Red Nielsen. He was the agent in there, and they had fired a guy that worked there before me, a fella, and when I took it, he come over with a shotgun and wanted his pencils. So
He wanted his pencils?
yeah, and he'd left some pencils there, and he was pretty well saturated, and he came in there with a shotgun. But this Nielsen was fast, and he could do that work no time fast, and then he'd go to town and play cards, see,
Is that right?
poker, and he got nipping when he run short in the money, because the freight money they had they had to handle it there. So they had to pay their freight bills for stuff that come in.
Okay.
Of course, it was bonded. So they come one time when he'd done that for years, but payday he'd put it back. See? Well, they come one time between payday, and he was short, so they fired him.
Oh, wow.
And
really?
then they put him at another place where they didn't have to handle any money afterwards. Yeah, that was his brothers that run the pool hall, Nielsen and McDonald, years ago.
Okay.
And then McDonald died, Nielsen had it, and then I bought it in the 60s.
Yeah, that was way before he came to town.
And then I run it, and when I sold it to a guy named Beckett. And he run it till
Hallmark got it now.
he died, huh?
Hallmark's in there now.
Yeah,
What was the guy's Beckett's first name? Do you know? Elmer
Beckett.
Yeah, I think there's a picture over at the depot with him on the platform of the depot, on the CB&Q side, and I know the name's Beckett.
No, that'd
And
be
somebody-
Frank, wouldn't it?
Well, Frank Beckett worked for the Q.
Okay.
He was a conductor on the branch line went out
Oh, okay.
in there. He's down in the veterans home now. Him and young Boyle and me and a whole lot of them went to service at the same time.
Oh, really?
Took basic training down in Georgia.
Bill Kobush did too.
Bill Kobush, he was an engineer on the Q. He went the same time I did.
So you were about 18, 19, maybe?
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
He was 24 when he
Oh,
went in
really?
service.
Oh, okay.
You see, I didn't have to go because I was getting deferments from the railroad would give me 6 months at a time. Deferment. They didn't want us to go because they wanted to keep us.
Oh,
But then
okay.
we got into where all of my age was going, so I just wrote and told them. And
That was the
that-
time of the bulge, and
I didn't want
everybody
another.
went.
I didn't want another deferment, and
Yeah,
I went in there. Frank Beckett went in, and Bill Kobush went in, and the kid that run the garage down at LaSalle.
The Buick.
No,
Oh.
no, the Cadillac
I mean the Cadillac.
thing. Jones, Lambert Jones.
Name sounds familiar.
Yeah, they used to advertise. They had the
Yeah.
Cadillac down there. Well, him and his brother started over by the water tower. You know that round thing at the water thing over by the as you go out by the farmer's elevator.
Let me see. On the CB&Q side of the tracks there?
It was
Oh,
along the highway there.
yeah, right, sure, okay.
Yeah. And the little building right across the street from that, they used to have a garage there, and they sold Studebakers them days.
Oh,
And he married an engineer's daughter off the Q,
okay.
and then when they got divorced, he went down and started up the Cadillac garage down there. He married a girl down there then.
Okay. Now, did your grandfather work for the railroad at all?
Yeah, my grandfather was hired. He worked for the Illinois Central before the
really?
Milwaukee.
Oh, okay.
And they hired him off of the IC as the first foreman over there, as a foreman there then.
Oh, onto the Milwaukee.
Under the Milwaukee,
Oh, okay.
as a foreman, they hired him. See,
Wow.
he was hired as a foreman.
That's when the
See, they had quite a few sections. They had a section that come down to Mendota out there.
Okay.
And then this section used to go to Peterstown. And then the lad section came from Peterstown up.
Oh, okay. I didn't know there were that many sections.
Oh yeah, they had
they had a lot of trains.
a lot of trains those days.
Now, how big was the yard in Mendota, the Milwaukee yard? Were there a few tracks, or?
There was going down by the depot. There was the main line, and then to the east that track on the east was the passing track. The one behind the depot was the house track.
Okay.
Then the first corner where you lived there, from south of the depot, there was a switch which went down beyond the next road down,
Okay.
and that was a scale track in there. Then on the south end of the house track was the stockyards down there. See, them days, the only way they handled, years ago, most of the way they handled cattle was by rail. And then there was a stockyards there, then there was a car repairman shanty there, and then the a section shanty was down there, and then of course the water tower that I took on was down there.
Okay.
And
Quite a bit.
then on the west side of the main line down beyond the yards, what they call the reducing track. They could bring more coal out of Ladd than they could take out of Mendota. Because from Mendota to 2 or 3 miles north of Welland, it's all uphill. It's all uphill all the way. And they
Okay.
couldn't-
So they reduced the size of the trains.
Then they had
Okay.
one track over on the east side. Well, then when I worked on the section, I helped build the next track, number 2. They had number 1 and number 2.
Okay.
And we built that. My dad was foreman then, and I was working for him.
So
But you see, I was working on in the yard, as I said. Then the superintendent, he came down and he offered me another $25 a month. And I used to go up and throw them 2 switches north of the depot that went out off the IC onto the Milwaukee,
Sure.
so that they wouldn't have to slow down enough to get that. They could get a run for the hill. They could take more tonnage up, see?
Oh, really? So they
So-
must have been going a pretty good clip then.
So I got $25 a month extra for going up and throwing them switches every night.
I know
Yeah.
exactly what switches you're talking about too. Yeah.
Yeah, and then
Huh.
and then I went to work on my grandfather on the section for a while, and then my grandfather retired and my dad got it.
Oh, okay.
So then I went to work for him, and I worked up till in the 40s. I was 21 when we got married, and that would be in 1941. The next spring, wasn't it?
Got October.
In October that year, I bid in the section foreman job at Sturdivant on the main line. I was just 21. Me and the wife went up and stayed there at the Bull Moose Hotel. We relieved Earl Parker. He was a section foreman, and he got a man killed in the yards there. And they'd taken him off. And then after the investigation come back, why he went on the extra gang. They used to call it extra gang foreman.
Oh.
And so I was section foreman up there. And one rainy day, we were sitting in the car shanty, and the superintendent come in. I had the men all in. It was raining, and he come in. I thought, oh. He said, "Come out here." He said, "I knew your grandpa and I knew you, but," he said, "when I heard there was a kid down here on this railroad, 21 years old, foreman," he said, "I got in the car and come right down." So I had to go out on main line there, and he said, "Get down and tell me what's the matter with this track." So I did. He said, "Oh, I was worried." He said, "It's all right." He went back to Milwaukee.
Is that right?
Milwaukee at that time, yeah.
Yeah.
Then he got short, there one day, and when Parker came back, then I stayed there as first man. And he called me up one day and wanted me to fire an engine into Chicago. I said, I don't know anything about firing an engine. He said, you can do it. So he said, they'll pick you up there at Sturtevant at the platform. I said, okay. So I fired in there. And then when I guess he liked it, because then he offered me a job braking. He come out and he said, all you can be is a roadmaster where you're at. He said, go into train service. He said, I'll give you your date now and you work. And I said, well, I can't afford to work extra just now and then. The business hadn't started yet for the war, you know. So he said, you work down there, and when we need you, we'll call you, and you go back. When you're not working on the train, you work there. So it worked fine. So then I got, me and the section foreman, Earl Parker, we got at odds. I quit and came down and took the job here.
Okay.
Again. So then he wasn't satisfied. The superintendent got a hold of me and he said, if you'll go to work at Ladd, I'll give you your seniority and
Okay.
start. So that's how I started there.
Okay.
And then I was promoted to conductor. And so that pretty well tells that.
Okay. Now, what was Ladd like? Was that a big junction of different?
Ladd, they had a depot right down at the crossing. Then they had a yard office,
Okay.
which was manned by New York Central men down there, because that was New York Central. And they had a roundhouse
Okay.
down there where they turned their engine, and they had a Y too. They could turn them.
Now, did that Y connect with the track that went up to Cherry?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Now, was the depot the Milwaukee depot, or was that a New York Central?
New York Central.
New York Central.
Mhm.
So the one that's still there now is a New
I
York
believe
Central.
it's still there. And
Yeah.
then as you go up that road through Palmieri's there, right next to Palmieri's,
Okay.
there's a little shed up there, a little place that was the yard office.
For the Milwaukee.
And
Okay.
the board was there. But see, they originally it was at Mendota, and they transferred it to Ladd
Okay.
when they took the dispatchers out. See,
Okay.
and they put them in Beloit, Wisconsin, and they worked out of the depot up there. And then as time went on, they cut part of the depot off at Beloit and moved it down, and they call it the South Yard. And then the dispatchers were there in the South Yard in that
Okay.
building. So we didn't have to go up. We used to have to couple our train and everything right on the main street there in Beloit, and it was getting kind of hostile, you know. They'd sit there and pump the air and, you know, and fiddle faddle around.
Now, what was the length of the line that you had to work from? Did you go up to like Janesville and with Beloit, you're saying, and then you come all the way down to Mendota in a day?
Originally, it went from Ladd when I went to Janesville, Wisconsin, and then it cut it down, and they stopped it at Beloit, and then they had a train every night come out of Janesville, and then they switched at Beloit all night. So then they cut us off at Beloit, and then of course our rights went clean into Milwaukee. We could go into Milwaukee and work from Milwaukee to Savannah and back and forth through there.
Now, was that a day trip? You stayed up there and then came back the next day?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it a 12-hour day? About
16-hour day.
16 hours?
Day 12 would be a short one.
16 hours they had
Really?
them days. That's right.
So a typical day, you get on the train here in Mendota, and a typical day would be what? You start here, you got
15 hours.
Okay, and then along the way...
Sometimes we just pulled in and stopped. We had our 16 hours in.
Oh, so you
When we went-
couldn't go over
Because
16.
towards the end, when the last few years I worked there, we went clean into Janesville
Okay.
because they'd put a electric plant between Beloit and Janesville. It took a carload of coal a day.
Okay.
So then they put us on in, and then to handle that coal.
Okay, now where would that coal come from? Since the
came-
Cherry Mine was gone.
Oh yeah, well it came from the IC and the Q, and then,
Okay.
then later they brought it out of Chicago. I don't know where it came from.
Okay.
But the Q used to, at one time when I worked in the yard office, delivered company coal by the train load.
Really?
I'd go down, line the switch, and would shove it. They'd shove right on through it to the reducing track.
Really?
And then at another time, it was the IC that brought it up from Southern Illinois.
Now I do remember, even when I was a teenager, the Illinois Central coming up and setting out a string of coal cars,
Mm-hmm.
you know, on their interchange track down there where I used
Yeah,
to
on
live.
1 and 2 they would go. See, they couldn't cross the main line because that
Yeah. Right, it'd be on the east side of the main.
would, right. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. I didn't know the Q was also
Yeah.
bringing coal.
Yeah, at one
also.
time, yeah, the Q brought
Yeah.
coal in.
Because
So-
their switch would have been right off of 5th Street there, right? On the curb there.
Yeah, it came right down behind the depot. You see, between the main line and the house track was a little track that connected up there. We called the pocket,
And I still remember you telling me that.
and they would hold 2 cars.
2 cars, that's
Yeah,
it.
in the pocket
Okay.
in there. And I had a debate one day with one of them signal men there on the queue. He said it was the signal was one of them low pot signals, you know, coming out. And I said, no. Oh yeah, because I don't care. Maintaining it was maybe 5-6 foot in the air.
Uh-huh.
That signal coming off of the Milwaukee onto the IC. You know, way down the yard you couldn't see a
Uh-huh.
little pot signal there. We'd switch in those yards. We had to switch when we came up, and all we had was those 3 tracks in the main line. We switched east, west. We'd set out at Davis Junction in 2 different yards, one to east and one to west, and then we'd have to set out for Beloit and Janesville. You know, had 4 cars plus your cars you set out on the way.
Okay, yeah, because you probably had stops at Welland and
So we'd be 2 hours down there putting them cars, you know,
yeah.
the Beloit cars would be at the rear.
They didn't have radios in those
In the
days.
Janesville,
Yeah.
no radios.
That's another thing I
Lantern.
was going to ask. What was the communication like back then? It was telegraph and lanterns?
Lanterns.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. When I
All hand
worked in the
signals.
depot before I went into train service, I learned, Nielsen started to teach me telegraphy.
Okay.
And my desk was over to the side by the water fountain, and then he had a desk on the side and then in the front where the telegraph was, in them bay windows they had there.
Okay. Yeah.
Telegraph was there. And then of course from there they operated the board, the signal out that came out on the track, you know, red or
Okay.
green for them,
Yeah.
because they used to give orders out there.
Now, did they have signals along, like, let's say from Mendota to Welland? Or was it just, it was all single track with maybe a few sidings here and there?
Yeah, there was sighting at Welland.
A good lengthy one for another train to fit in?
Oh no.
No? Okay, just this.
We run strictly on orders.
Oh, okay. All right, that's what I was
Strictly
wondering.
on orders, yeah,
Okay.
in there. Then we had signals. We went onto the queue at Stewart. We call it Stewart Junction. To Flag Center was double main because the queue went through there. But one of them main was Milwaukee because the main line started at Stewart and it quit at Flag, and that's the only place. Then we used to come down and switch the canning factory, and sometimes we had a switch engine that come out of Davis Junction switch all night, and the queue had one.
in Rochelle to
Yeah,
switch
in
the
Rochelle.
canning factory. Oh, I didn't
In
know
there.
that. Okay.
And of course now they've taken most of that out of Rochelle.
Yeah.
And that's when they started here. But we did have a canning factory right up there. That little road that went down and where the Milwaukee went off and the IC was just north and
Okay.
east of the IC was a canning factory, corn
Okay. Yeah.
plant there.
And you switched that too? Or?
No, that was.
Okay.
I don't know how they got that out there. Really, I don't remember any tracks being in it. The Interidian,
In Iridian.
they called it. Yeah.
Okay.
But they used to come in there with wagons, and then they'd pull it with tractors, 2 wagons behind a tractor, and
Okay.
then bring their corn in into that place.
darn.
And then unload it. They lifted the wagon, and they had a fork, 3-tine fork, and they would rake it down
Okay.
like a pitchfork, only it was bent down. So
Oh, okay.
in there.
Interesting. I remember you telling me about the times that they would stop with the coal trains somewhere around here, and people would get up on the trains and
Yeah.
take coal off of the cars for their houses.
We had a detective who was killed in the yards there at Mendota. They were up piling the coal, and he was down. And he climbed up in the car, and they shoved him off and the car, and hit the rail and killed him.
Oh my. Huh.
But they used to go down the yards and line them nice big chunks up, on the side, and then we'd go slow out of Mendota because it was all uphill. Get going, and they'd shove out coal off them cars all the way out there by the high school, and then
Is that right?
they'd go back and pick it up after the train left. See, and then they had a lot of people from Mendota. It was poor going at that time,
Yeah.
and they used to go down and pick up coal off the tracks. There was always somebody along the track picking up
Yeah.
coal with a sack or something
Yeah.
in there.
I remember in the 70s walking the IC line, and you'd see coal here and there, from the cars.
Yeah, so. Other than that,
Well, I'll tell you what, I didn't even have
then
to
there
look
was a
at
stockyard over on the IC there, right across from
Right
my
bet-
aunt.
right between the Milwaukee and the IC tracks. Is that
No,
what you're talking about? Or
on
no?
the. It was on the east side of the
I
IC,
see, right. Okay, along 7th Avenue there.
along 7th Avenue.
There was a stockyard.
Yeah.
Huh.
See, you was down in my grandpa's house, well, 1 block north. I mean,
Okay.
belonged to my aunt, my dad's sister.
Okay.
And the next house there was a lady lived in. Well, my aunt bought it later, but the Western Union lady lived next door. They used to send telegrams years ago, a lot of them,
Okay.
and she was a Western Union up there,
And then the stockyards was right there.
right
In the
across
middle.
the street. See,
Okay,
they had
yeah.
to, when they was hauling them, they could only have them in the car so long, then they had to let them out and water and feed them.
Okay.
See? And that was the reason for everybody had a stockyard. The Q had a stockyard up by the little houses that belonged to Schmitz.
Okay. And you said the Milwaukee
The
had one.
Milwaukee and the IC all had one, because that was the law. They had to.
Now,
If-
was the stockyards for the Milwaukee south of town there, you said, not too far away from where the water tower was?
Yeah, it was right down at the end of the house track. They put some tanks in there.
So it was on the east
you
side,
know where them
west
big
side.
tanks are?
Yeah.
Right about in there.
Okay. See, I didn't know that. I
Yeah.
was thinking it was that one farm with the silo that's still there now, in
Oh.
between the Milwaukee and the IC. Did that
No,
ever
there is
handle
no
camp?
farm between the Milwaukee and the IC.
Yeah. Well, there's kind of like a little. I guess they used to have cattle in there because it's built up like for cattle or something. I don't know. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking
Well,
about.
The land in between there belonged to Cutter. On the east side of the track, that farm there belonged to Herman Cutter.
Okay, that's the farm I'm talking
And
about.
that farm on the west side was also part of that farm, and that's that first brick house as you go out on 34 or on 51.
Okay.
That was his son, and he farmed that farm. And he used to. Them days when he picked the corn, he had to take it across the tracks because the corn building was on that side of the track.
Oh, okay.
And then, of course, the IC and the Milwaukee would block him. Oh, he would be unhappy. Oh, he
That's
would be unhappy.
interesting.
We call that cross there was Cutter's Crossing. I call it
Okay.
in there.
I didn't know that. I was wondering what that was
The,
about.
IC agent there in Mendota, he'd married one of the Cutter girls in there.
Okay.
And that's about all I can tell you about the railroad.
Well, I didn't even have to look at this really, and we must have covered most all of these questions just by talking, which was great. Gosh,
The